Hello, kids. How are you today? I am Mrs. Amy Sevilla, your English teacher for Quarter 3, Module 1. Now, before we will start to open our module, I want you to find a place in your house nga diin komportable mo sa inyong pagpaminaw karon. Okay, are you ready now? Very good. Let's get started. I want you to open your module on the second page. Let's try to read the different parts of this module. The first is the introduction. This gives you an overview of the content that you will take up in the module. Next is the pre-test. This checks your prior knowledge of the content to be discussed in the module. Now the target. This lists the marks that you are expected to develop through the lessons in the module. Then optimize. This allows you to review and recall prerequisite knowledge and skills. Capture. This prepares you for the content you will learn. It may ask you to look at the things around you, to think of things you have used, or to remember what you have experienced. Next is navigate. This provides clear discussion of the content that you need to learn with guide questions, examples, illustrations, formative exercise, and takeaways. Next is enrich. This strengthens your understanding of the lesson through guided and independent activities. Focus. This helps you to synthesize everything you have learned from the module. Then apply. This engages you in a task that will enable you to transfer or use what you have learned to real-life situations, issues, and problems. Then the post-test. This evaluates how much you have learned from the lessons in the module. However, before you proceed with using the module, remember this. Number 1, prepare yourself physically, mentally, and emotionally for the task and learning experiences ahead. Make a schedule that will give you balanced time between study and recreation. Number 2, be ready with the resources and materials you will need. This may include your pen or pencil, a pad paper, a notebook, and dictionaries and similar references. Number 3, keep a notebook where you can jot down notes, draw diagrams, or summarize what you have just read. Number 4, read carefully the instructions that have been provided in its part of the module to ensure that you have a smooth and meaningful learning experience. Number 5, if your parent or guardian is around, ask him or her for help with words or activity directions that may be difficult for you to understand. Number 6, do your best to answer the guide questions and quick exercises. Number 7, check your answers using the answer key found at the end of the module. Number 8, give yourself time to rest and relax when you are mentally tired. Remember to go back to the module and finish your work on it. Now let's read the introduction. What is informational text? Now, when you were younger, you found stories very interesting to listen or read. You would ask your parents or the storyteller in the family to tell you one. Their stories never failed to awe or amaze you. You even passed on these stories on your friends and amazed them just the same. However, as you grow older, you find many new things around you. You would like to know more about them. So you begin to look for information. Your growing mind wants to be fed with knowledge. You feel the hunger for information. Information that will make life better, not only for yourself, but also for others. Information is everywhere. You also have the tools to gather information you need and handle it. All you have to do is observe, listen, and read. Observing will lead you to look for the information you need. Listening and reading will help you sort out this information. Fortunately, there are many reading materials where you can find selections that provide information. These selections are called informational texts. In this module, you will be introduced to some of them. Now, to check your knowledge about informational text, I want you to answer first the pre-test. I'll give you 10 minutes to answer the pre-test. That's the longest time. So I believe you're all done. Now let's check your answers. Okay, are you done checking your work? Is there somebody who got 10 points? Now, if your score is 10 points, you are exempted for this module. But I guess nobody got it. So let's continue. Now, let's have the target or the objectives of this module. At the end of the module, you will be able to distinguish text types according to purpose and features, classification, explanation, enumeration, and time order. Summarize various text types based on elements. Show examples of ways that reflect responsible stewardship of the environment. Lesson 1, purpose and features of text types that explain and classify. Let's SubOptimise. You have read many stories since you learned how to read. What do you like about stories? Do you remember the elements of a story? Copy the shapes in your notebook and write these elements in them. Get your cues from the images and the given first letters. Okay, for elements of a story, first cue is letter C. What do you think is the answer? Okay, it's character. Very good. Next is letter P for plot. Very good. And next is setting. Very good. Then, based on the cue, it's conflict. Very good. And theme. So those are the elements of a story. Now, as you grow older, you become interested not only in stories, but in different images you see around. There are pictures, paintings, sculptures, posters, and others that capture your attention. Sometimes, you stop to look at these visual images more closely and walk away with added information or a message in your mind. What can you get from the visual image you find below? Examine the picture and finish the given sentence, then write them in your notebook. So look at your module, it's on page 3. There are 2 unfinished sentences. Try to finish these 2 sentences. Write your answer in your notebook. Now, unlike stories or narratives, there are mostly fiction or not true. In other words, dili siya tinuod, no, not true. Some selections are written to give information, and these are called informational text. Now, informational texts are materials that are non-fiction. Meaning to say, tinuod siya. Dili pareha sa non-fiction nga, just coming from the imagination of the writer. So sa mga gagmay pa mo, siguro you like to read Cinderella, sa mga girls, sa mga boys, siguro Pinocchio or other stories, and those are fiction stories only. Those are not informational text. Now, the main purpose of informational text is to give facts or information on a specific topic. Writers of informational text write them either to inform, to persuade, or to describe. They include biographies, autobiographies, books about science, history, and the arts, and other technical books. Informational texts have an opening or introduction, the body where the writer talks about the information, and an ending or conclusion. So ang informational text na po siya 3 parts. Ang introduction, ang body, and conclusion. Now read the short paragraphs. Which are stories or narratives and which are informational texts? Now look at page 4 of your module. Let's try to identify if the paragraph is a narrative. So for narrative, you're going to write N. Or if it is an informational text. So if it is an informational text, you're going to write IT. Now, let's read number 1 paragraph. The family decided to strictly follow the safety and health protocols and hoped everyone to do so. While walking one day, Tatay Lito saw his neighbor not wearing a face mask. He kindly reminded her to put on her mask. When she said she did not have one, Tatay Lito went back home, got a new one, and gave it to her. The woman was pleased and thanked Tatay for the gift. Now, what is this paragraph? Very good. It is a narrative. So letter N. For number 2, who likes to read? Paragraph number 2 is? Okay, very good. It is an informational text. It tells us about the viruses or the parasites. Number 3. What is this paragraph? Okay, it is an informational text. Very good. How many got 3 correct answers? Good job. Informational texts are factual. At times, stories about events happening in certain settings are used to prove a point and add an entertainment value to the text. Were you able to identify the paragraphs correctly? Okay, so if not yet, do not worry. You will have more chances as you go along in this module. Now let's move on to page 5. Navigate. Here is another example of an informational text. Read it and find out what it is about and what information you can get out of it. So look at page 5. What is the title? Okay, our wildlife, our treasure. So this is made up of how many paragraphs? Very good. There are 5 paragraphs. I want you to read the 5 paragraphs and be ready to answer the questions after the selection. Okay, I'll read this for you. Look at your modules and follow where I am reading. First paragraph. Various sources describe wildlife as the many kinds of plants and animals that grow and live in the wild. The animals in this classification have very little contact with humans. Thus, they are undomesticated or wild. Included in the Philippine wildlife are birds, reptiles, and amphibians, of which there are 1,437 species. Of this, 711 species are endemic or native to our country. The water that surrounds our archipelago is teeming with corals and is home to more than 2,000 species of fish. Our coral reefs have attracted tourists who marvel at their beauty. Our forests boast of different species of animals. Among these are the Philippine crocodile found in Mindoro, the tarsier of Bohol, and the bear cat, the mouse deer or pilandok of Palawan, the pygmy fruit bat, and the Philippine eagle in Mindanao. Our country is also a rich habitat for different plants. The pitcher plant, which is actually a carnivorous plant. The Philippine teak tree, which grows up to 25 meters high. The almasiga, an evergreen large tree. The Philippine data palm and some orchids are among these. But while we boast of these blessings, many of these species are threatened or endangered. This is why the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, or the DENR, has taken steps to stop the further destruction and loss of Philippine wildlife. Wild plants and animals help maintain nature's balance. They are also used to produce new hybrids of plants and animals and in conducting experiments. These species are also good ecotourism attractions. Just think of the excitement of the future generation of Filipinos when they encounter these plants and animals. March 3 of every year is named World Wildlife Day, or WWD, by the United Nations General Assembly. Therefore, should you not help in their conservation? So this is taken from Tevis Catherine, DNR, to intensify wildlife info campaign, DNR website, and photo is from DENR. Now let's answer the questions. Let's have this orally. Number 1. What is this selection about? Okay, very good. It is about wildlife. Number 2. What is the meaning of wildlife? When you say wildlife, okay, it means it is in the wild. They are not found in our house. Number 3. According to this text, what does wildlife include? Okay. It includes animals and plants in the forest. And number 4. Why are the pilandok, the Philippine eagle, the Philippine teak tree, and orchids considered wildlife? Okay, it's because the animals, or these animals, are not tamed or are not kept as pets. Okay, so Lisod sila nimo buhion sa balay as pets. They are living in the forest. And number 5, do you agree that everyone should help in the conservation of these natural resources? Why? How can you show this? Okay, you are going to write your answer for number 5 in your notebook. The selection you have just read gives you a lot of information on wildlife. Did you notice that it also talks about the classification of wildlife? The writer wrote this selection to show how wildlife is grouped and gave examples as well. So this is an informational text that shows classification. It is also an explanatory text. The text also explains why conserving these resources is important. Can you identify the part in the selection that aims to explain why there is a need for celebrating Wildlife Day? Okay, in what paragraph can we find the answer? Okay, very good. Okay, now let's move to page 7. Here is another paragraph. What does this paragraph tell you? Okay, very good. Those majestic mountains. We're so lucky to have many mountains around us. Although they may look the same, they are formed differently. So how mountains are formed? So read this paragraph silently, and we're going to answer the 3 questions after you have read a paragraph. Can you identify the title? What's the title of this? Okay, very good. Those majestic mountains. And what is the subtitle? How mountains are formed. Okay, the text can also have drawings or illustrations to help the reader understand clearly what the writers want to say. There can also be graphs, tables, or charts to be better understood. To show why the text is written, you will find clues in the words used. In the text, you could find the names of the kinds of mountains according to how they were formed. There are words that tell you the purpose of the text. Remember the selection about wildlife? Because it is also an explanatory text. You could find the phrase, "that is why." So after the explanation has been given, so na ay word nga, "that is why." So what's the answer for question number 1? What are the different kinds of mountains? Very good. The dome mountains, the folded mountains, and volcanic mountains. How are they classified? Okay, they are classified according to how they were formed. Very good. Okay, for lesson 2, purpose and feature of text types that enumerate and show time order. So optimize. We are going to recall. Okay, let's answer. Recall the preceding lesson about informational text. Let's just answer this orally. We're going to complete the sentences orally. For number 1, informational texts are written to what? Okay, very good. To inform, to persuade, and to explain. Number 2, writers of informational texts study, research, and investigate to give the readers correct information. So they're doing a research, they study so that they can give the readers the correct information. So number 3, informational texts are different from narratives because they give factual information while narrative are more from imagination. Okay, do you get it? Very good. Okay, let's have capture. Now that you know what informational texts are, look for a book in your house where you can find this text. Browse through 3 of them and fill out the table here on page 8. So mangita mo og book sa inyo ang balay nga na ay mga mabasa nga informational text. I'm sure there are many, but you're going to select only 3. So this will be done in your notebook. So you're going to write the title of the selection. So does it explain? So if it yes, put yes. If it is no, put no or write no. Are things classified in it? If it is yes, so you're going to write yes. Kung wala, then no. And then, is it something else? Okay, if yes, you're going to write yes. If no, write no. Okay. In the past lesson, you learned about informational texts that show classification and explanation. There are other kinds of text aside from this too, which you will know after reading the selection that follows. Now, have you tried to travel to another place? There are many modes of transportation you can consider. You can travel on the roadways, the railways, the waterways, or the airways. I want you to read the next paragraph silently and be ready to answer the questions that follow. Okay, now turn your modules to page 10. Shall we answer the questions now? Number 1. What is the writer of this text trying to tell you? Okay, the writer is telling that there are many ways to travel. Okay, number 2. If you are planning a trip with your family, what will you take and why? So it is your own. So each one of you has different answer for this. I'm sure some of you likes to travel by airplane or by bus or by the ship. So let's continue. Look at below. In your notebook, make a list of these modes of transportation enumerated in the text. Add more lines if you need to. So you are going to list down the different transportation by sea. So you can write only up until number 4 or more if you have more answers, or by land, another, then by air. Okay. You can talk about the life cycle of insects in a time order informational text. This kind of text is also called sequence text. Can you tell why? In a time order or sequence text, the writer describes the order of events happening. So, dili nimo pwede ibaliktad ang mga panghitabo. What happens first should be in the first, then next. To show that the words first, second, next, then, after, finally, in the end, lastly, and others are used. The events in a sequence text are found in the body of the text. So, can we now answer the 3 questions below? Number 1. What sequence of events is described about the mosquito? Okay, very good. It's the life cycle of a mosquito. Number 2. Which is the beginning event? Of course, hatching eggs. Very good. Number 3. What is the last event? Okay, when it becomes adult mosquito. Very good. Okay, now we are in lesson 3, describing various text types based on elements. Let's SubOptimize. Now you have learned the 4 kinds of informational text in the previous lessons. Now look at the picture. This is Carlo and his grandmother. Help Carlo answer his grandmother's questions below. So we will be answering this orally now. So, what informational text will I use if I need to? Number 1. Know how to sew the costume for you. Likes to answer. Okay, very good. We are going to use sequence. Okay, number 2. Because, do you know why? Because it tells different steps to follow. So it is sequence. For number 2, group the costumes I found. Very good. Classification. So you're going to group, you're going to classify. Number 3, understand why costumes are important. Of course, explanation. So why? It answers the question why. It's always explanation. Number 4, list the names of the different costumes. Very good. Enumeration. Okay. Okay, turn your module on page 12. Capture. When you need to know the answers to some of your questions like those which grandmother asked, you should know what kind of text you need to read. Now, you are going to match the topic with a kind of text where you will find the information. Topics are written in the left side and the texts are written in the right side. Number 1, kinds of insects. What text are you going to use? Very good. It's classification. How about number 2? The importance of physical activities. Okay, it's explanation. Number 3, how to start a vegetable farm. Okay, very good. It's sequence or time order because you're going to follow several steps. Number 4, the different musical terms. The answer is enumeration. And number 5, Influences of the Spanish regime. The correct answer is letter A, enumeration again. So very good. Knowing the purpose, signal words, and language used and studying the body of the text will help you choose the material you need. Now, study this chart. Look at the chart on page 12. Okay, this chart summarizes what you have learned about the different informational texts. Okay, kinds, purpose, features, and signal words used. So for classification, the author tells how things are grouped or classified. Okay, groups, classes, types, categories are the signal words. Explanation. The author tells how something works or why something happens. So signal words are that is why, due to this, therefore, as a result, and because. For sequence, the author describes the order of events or how to do things. So we are using this first, second, before, after, then, last, and finally. And for enumeration, the author gives many things in a list. So, and the following to enumerate, use of bullets, numbers are used. Okay, so I guess you already know the different kinds of informational text. Okay, so let's have page 13 of your module, enrich. Okay, guided activity number 1. So look at the picture. Okay, you can see that there are farmers planting rice. Rice is a staple or main food in most Filipino homes. It takes hard work to put rice on the table. Read this paragraph about planting rice and complete the prompt. Write your answers in your notebook. I'll give you a few minutes to read the paragraph. Okay, are you done reading? So let's answer the questions below. The title of the text is Planting Rice. Very good. Now it explains what? It explains how difficult is the work of the rice farmer. Third, it says that, okay, people should not waste rice. And the last, this paragraph is an example of what kind of informational text? Okay, a text that explains. Very good. Okay, turn your modules now to page 14. Guided activity 2. Here are some titles of informational text. See if you can identify what kind of text each one is. Now take your cue from the words in them and what it could be about. Give the reasons, you say so. Write your answers in the space provided. Okay, for number 1. So don't forget, you're going to identify the kind of informational text, then write the reason. Number 1, the instruments in the string section of the orchestra. What should be used? Okay, enumeration. What's the reason? So the text will give list of instruments in this section. So when you say instruments, there's so many kinds of instruments. You're naming different kinds of instruments. So you are enumerating. Number 2, why is conservation important? Remember the word why. Okay, very good. Explanation. What's the reason? The text will give reasons why this is important. Number 3, the events that led to Freedom Day. Okay, very good. Sequence or time order. What's the reason? Because you're going to write what happened during this time will be given in order. So from the first that happened, then next, until the last. Number 4, how to mend your own clothes. Okay, very good. Sequence. Why? What's the reason? So, step-by-step direction will be found here. So you're going to follow steps on how to mend your own clothes. And the last, number 5, arranging books in the library. Okay, classification. What's the reason? The text will show to group the books in the library. So you're going to group or classify the different books in the library. Okay. For independent activity 1 and 2, you are going to read the directions carefully and then answer this activity in your notebook. Now, finally, the focus. Look at the diagram. Examine this anchor chart that summarizes what you have learned in this module. So let's try to evaluate, or let's try to look at what we have learned from lesson 1, lesson 2, and lesson 3. Informational text and the different kinds are 4 that we have learned. Enumeration, it gives the list. Sequence tells order. Explanatory explains. And classification groups. Okay, so I hope all of you have fully understood our lesson. Now, put together these ideas in a paragraph to answer the question of what are informational texts. So, I hope everything is clear in your mind. Now you're going to apply what we have learned today. So, what job do you want to do in the future? What do you want to be? You're going to write 4 paragraphs about it, showing the different kinds of informational text. Identify the information that you can place in each of the 4 kinds. Make an organizer to help you tie the ideas in each kind together. Develop the text and insert what you need to make it look interesting. Pictures, drawings, graphs, or tables can be used. Put a title that captures what your text is about. Read the text again and see if your ideas are well organized and connected. Now, the rubric is found on page 16. This is the rubric that you will use to rate your own work. Okay, and now to evaluate how much you have learned from the lessons in this module, you're going to answer the post-test in your answer sheet. Okay, so good luck, children. I hope you had a productive and enjoyable time learning today. Bye. See you again next time.